The green line, which is the line that seems to go around the West Bank and cut through the middle of Jerusalem, we call it the Green Line. Some people call it the pre-1967 borders or the pre-1967 boundaries. Those lines were created in 1949 when Israel negotiated an armistice with its neighbouring states who had attacked it. So they are armistice lines, they are treaty ceasefire lines, which ended some conflict. But they were not borders, they were never intended to be legally binding borders between Israel and its neighbours. The armistice agreements between Israel and its neighbours, which were achieved in 1949, for example with Jordan, also with Egypt, expressly state that these were not to be legally binding borders. They expressly state they do not say anything about the territorial sovereignty of Israel over, for example, the West Bank or the Gaza Strip. They simply create a ceasefire between Israel and those states. In order to argue that these are legally binding borders, you would need to say that in some way the Palestinian people, whatever they are, let's call them Palestinian people, the population in the West Bank, have some kind of sovereign right to those borders, which can only be the case if they are a state, or if they have some right to self-determination within those borders. Now, if you look, for example, at the Palestinian National Charter, it doesn't talk about those borders being the borders of a Palestinian state. The borders that are expressed in the National Charter are the whole of Palestinian Mandate territory, which includes the State of Israel. So even the PLO National Charter doesn't support the idea that these are legally binding borders. It can only be used, and the way that it is being used is to say that in some political way the Palestinians have this right based on those borders.